A mammoth is charging you. 9 tons of muscle and tusk. You don't throw your spear. You kneel. You plant it in the dirt, and you let the animal kill itself. Here are the 10 ideas that let a soft, clawless ape kill the giants of the Ice Age. Number 10. The planted pike. The spear you don't throw. For decades, archaeologists argued about a single beautiful object, the Clovis point, a razor-edged stone blade, knapped to perfection, that turns up across North America from around 13,000 years ago, sometimes lying in the same ground as the bones of mammoths and mastodons. The question was how it was used. Did hunters throw it, jab with it, or did they just scavenge animals that were already dying and use the points as butchery knives? In 2024, a team of archaeologists at UC Berkeley, led by Scott Byram, published an answer in the journal PLOS 1 that almost nobody had taken seriously before. Maybe they didn't throw it at all. Their idea was that the Clovis spear was a pike. You set the butt of it against the ground, wedged and angled upward, and you held your nerve while the animal came. The mammoth's own charge, all of that mass, all of that speed, drove the point into its body with a force no human arm could ever generate. As one of the researchers put it, the energy in a thrown spear and the energy in a charging animal are not in the same league. They are an order of magnitude apart. You are not the one delivering the blow. The animal delivers it to itself. And then there is the detail that turns this from clever to genuinely chilling. When the Berkeley team built a rig to test it, dropping an 11-kilogram weight onto a braced replica spear to simulate the impact, they watched the weapon behave like something engineered centuries later. The stone point drove backward into the split shaft, and the wood and bone spread the wound open as it went, the whole system blossoming inside the animal the way a hollow point bullet does. The spear was not just a spike. It was a wound-expanding machine, and it was powered entirely by the victim. Now the honest part, because it sets the tone for a lot of this list. This is a hypothesis, a strong one, built on an experiment and on a worldwide record of people who really did hunt dangerous animals, bears, wild boar, with braced, planted spears. But no Clovis wooden shaft has ever survived. Wood rots, and after 13,000 years, all we have is the stone. So no one has ever dug up a planted pike still standing in the ground. What we have is the physics, the points, and the global pattern, and they all line up. That global pattern is worth dwelling on, because the planted spear is not some exotic guess. It is one of the oldest tricks in the book for a human facing an animal that outweighs them. European boar spears were built with a crossbar behind the blade for exactly this reason, so that a charging boar, impaling itself, could not drive its own body up the shaft and reach the hunter before it died. Hunters across Africa, Asia, and the Pacific are documented bracing the butts of heavy spears against the ground or their own feet to receive a charge. The whole strategy assumes the same grim truth the Berkeley team built their model around, that the safest way to put a spear deep into a huge, aggressive animal is to let the animal supply the force. And the Clovis points themselves keep turning up in suggestive places. At sites in the American Southwest, stone points have been found lying among and even embedded in the bones of single mammoths, several to an animal, the debris of a real and repeated and deadly contact between people and the largest beasts they ever faced. Picture the courage it took. You do not get to run. You kneel in the path of the largest land animal in your world. You set the butt of your spear into the dirt, and you wait for a wall of muscle and tusk to close the distance and choose, without knowing it, to die on the thing you are holding. That is where the countdown starts. Number 9, the pit trap. A hole in the ground is the first machine. In 2019, on the northern edge of Mexico City, in a place called TULTEPEC, archaeologists from Mexico's National Institute of Anthropology and History were excavating land that was about to become a garbage dump. What they found stopped the bulldozers cold. 2 enormous pits, dug into the earth roughly 15,000 years ago, packed with the bones of mammoths. And these were not natural sinkholes. They were built. The numbers tell the story. The 2 pits held the remains of at least 14 mammoths, more than 800 bones in all, mixed with the bones of a horse and a camel, 2 other species that have since vanished from the Americas. Each pit was roughly 1.5 meters deep and 25 meters across, with steep, near-vertical walls. That detail matters enormously, because vertical walls are not how a natural pit forms. They are how you stop a trapped mammoth from clawing its way back out. Someone shaped those walls on purpose. Think about what that took, with no metal of any kind. Digging 2 pits the width of a basketball court, deep enough to swallow an elephant, using fire-hardened wood, stone, antler, and bare hands. And then the hunt itself. Groups of perhaps 20 or 30 people, using torches and branches, to peel a few mammoths away from the herd and steer the panicking animals toward the open ground, until the earth dropped out from under them and they crashed down among the bones of the ones that fell before. The team even found layers of volcanic ash from an eruption of Popocatépetl dated to around 14,700 years ago, lying above and between the layers of bone, which means these traps were in use again and again for something like 5 centuries. For a long time, the assumption had been that early humans rarely tangled with mammoths head-on, that mostly we scavenged them or got lucky with one already stuck in the mud. The lead archaeologist called the find a watershed, and he was right, because it flipped the picture. This was not luck. This was infrastructure, a permanent, reusable killing installation, planned and maintained across generations. Not everyone is convinced, and the objection is reasonable. A specialist at the University of Michigan pointed out that you cannot completely rule out that some of these animals died of natural causes and were simply butchered where they lay. But the architecture is the hard part to explain away. Natural deaths do not dig themselves vertical walled pits. The most economical reading of 2 engineered trenches full of mammoths is exactly what it looks like, a trap, used on purpose for a very long time. And the TULTEPEC pits did not stay a single curiosity for long. In the years after the discovery, work at nearby sites around the dried bed of Lake Saltykhan, just a few miles away, turned up the scattered remains of dozens more mammoths, by some counts around 60 individuals, in the same stretch of ancient lakeshore, hinting that this whole landscape may have been a sustained mammoth hunting ground rather than the scene of one clever ambush. The discovery forced a quiet rewrite of something archaeologists had long assumed, that mammoth meat was a rare windfall, eaten mostly when a carcass turned up by chance. The Mexican team's reading was the opposite. The scale of the trapping suggests mammoth may have been a regular, even routine part of the menu, that for the people of this valley, hunting the largest animal around was not a once-in-a-generation epic, but something closer to a recurring season of work. And it was work. To open a single one of these pits with fire-hardened digging sticks, stone scrapers, antler picks, and baskets to haul the spoil would have taken many people many days, all of it spent before a single mammoth was ever driven in. The trap was an investment, dug in advance, on the bet that the herds would come back. They did. There is a tactical subtlety buried in the find, too. You do not drive a whole herd of mammoths into a pit at once. A panicked mass of 9-ton animals is uncontrollable, and most would simply thunder around the hole. The likelier method was to cut individuals out, to split one or a few animals away from the protection of the herd and steer just those toward the trap. The same logic a wolf pack uses, scaled up by fire, noise, and numbers. And once the animal was down, the work that followed is written on the bones themselves. Some of the remains at TULTEPEC carry the marks of butchery, of meat stripped and bone broken open, which is what finally separates this from a graveyard. These animals were not just trapped, they were taken apart and eaten on the spot by the people who had engineered their fall. A pit is patient in a way a spear can never be. It does not tire, it does not miss, and it does not have to be brave. You dig it once and it kills for you for 500 years. It may be the first machine our species ever built, and the mammoth never saw the engineer. Number 8. The cliff drive. When the landscape is the weapon. In the foothills of the Rocky Mountains in southern Alberta, Canada, there is a sandstone cliff with a name that does not bother being subtle: Head Smashed In. For getting on for 6,000 years, indigenous hunters on the northern plains used this one cliff to kill bison on a scale that is hard to picture, and the proof is in the ground at its base. A deposit of bone and tools that runs as deep as 10 meters, layer on layer of hunts stacked across millennia. It is one of the oldest, largest, and best preserved sites of its kind on Earth, and it works on an idea so simple it sounds like it shouldn't. You do not fight the herd. You make the herd run, and you make sure it runs off a cliff. To do that, the hunters built long lines of stone cairns stretching for kilometers across the prairie above the drop. Drive lanes, funneling inward like an enormous chute. On the day of a hunt, runners took their places. Some, dressed in the skins of wolves, pressed the herd from behind to keep it moving. Others, the most dangerous job of all, went out front in the skin of a calf, bleeding, drawing the lead animals on. The bison were eased into the lanes, then spooked into a stampede. And a stampeding herd of 2,000-pound animals cannot stop or turn. By the time the front rank saw the edge, the weight of the animals behind shoved them over. The thing to understand is how much organization this demanded. You needed scouts who knew where the herds were, the lanes built and maintained over generations, and on the day, perhaps 50 or more people each playing a precise part, coordinated across a kilometer of open grass, with one chance to get it right. The reward matched the effort. A single good drive could put down dozens of animals at once, tons of meat, hide, and bone, enough to carry a community through a winter. And the plains were not the only place this happened. Far away, at Předmostí, in what is now the Czech Republic, hunters of the Ice Age left behind one of the most staggering bone beds in Europe. The remains of something on the order of 1,000 mammoths, accumulated at a single locality. Archaeologists still debate exactly how much of that was mass driving versus repeated kills at a natural trap over a long span of time. And that caution is fair. Not every great heap of bones is a single catastrophe, and some accumulations are natural. But the principle that links Předmostí to Head Smashed In is the same one. Somewhere, our ancestors looked at a cliff, or a ravine, or a river bluff, and understood that the deadliest weapon available to them was not in their hands at all. It was the shape of the land, if you could only herd an animal onto it. The genius was never only in the cliff itself, it was in everything arranged around it. At Head Smashed In, the drive began far back in a wide natural basin where the bison liked to graze, sometimes kilometers from the edge, a gathering basin the hunters knew intimately. The young man who took the role of the buffalo runner, luring the herd in the skin of a lost calf, was doing something so dangerous and so important that the role carried deep spiritual weight. If the herd broke the wrong way, he could be trampled. Below the drop, out of sight of the animals above, lay the other half of the operation. A whole camp of people ready to swarm the fallen herd, finish the wounded, and begin the colossal work of butchery, stripping meat, cracking bone for marrow and grease, and pounding it together with fat and berries into pemmican that could last for years. A successful drive was not the end of the hunt. It was the start of weeks of labor that turned a wall of dead bison into a winter of survival. The same logic of the landscape as trap shows up wherever the right terrain offered itself. On the plains of what is now Colorado, at a site called Olson Chubbuck, archaeologists found the remains of nearly 200 bison that had been stampeded, roughly 10,000 years ago, into a dry, steep-sided gully. Animals at the front, shoved in by the press behind, piling up until the arroyo itself became the killing floor. No cliff required, just a crack in the earth, a panicked herd, and people who understood exactly how to aim a stampede. What deepens all this is that the buffalo jump was never only a slaughter. It was a sacred undertaking. The communities who used places like Head Smashed Inn for thousands of years wrapped the hunt in ceremony. Rituals to call the herds, the dangerous role of the runner understood as a spiritual calling. Observances meant to ensure the animals returned the following year. The same cliff was used by generation after generation. The knowledge of the drive lanes and the gathering basin handed down as a living inheritance, so that a single landscape became at once a food supply, a school, and a shrine. This was not improvised desperation. It was a tradition of mass hunting so deep and so successful that it endured, on the northern plains until the very last centuries before the bison themselves were nearly wiped out by newcomers with rifles. That is the leap. The hunter at Head Smashed Inn never had to face a bison at spear's length. He read the country like a tool and let gravity do the killing. Number 7. The fire drive. Hunting with something you're not even holding. There's a way to move a herd of animals that requires no pit, no cliff, and no nerve to stand in front of anything. You set the world on fire behind them. A line of flame across dry grass, or a ring closing inward, and animals do the only sensible thing. They flee from the smoke and the heat, in whatever direction you have left open. Toward a waiting pit, toward a bluff, into a bog, or a bend in a river where they bunch up and slow down. Fire is a way to steer a stampede without ever touching it. We know people did this because people were still doing it when anthropologists arrived to write it down. Across the grasslands of the Americas, hunters used fire to manage bison and the land itself, burning to drive game and to green up the pasture that drew the herds back. Elephant hunters in Africa are described using fire in the same spirit. As a technique, it sits at the meeting point of hunting and landscape management. The same controlled burn that drives an animal today shapes the plain that feeds it tomorrow. For the deep past, this is where honesty has to come in, and it is a different kind of caution than the scavenging debate. Fire leaves ash and charcoal in the ground, but a layer of burnt earth does not come with a label saying, "This was a hunt." Distinguishing a deliberate fire drive from a natural wildfire, or from burning done for other reasons, is genuinely hard. And for the Paleolithic, the case rests largely on analogy with later peoples, rather than on a smoking gun site. So treat the fire drive as very probable and very old, but inferred, a technique we know humans use, pushed back into a past where the direct evidence is faint. The mechanics, where we can see them, were precise and seasonal. You burn with the wind, not against it. And you read the grass. Too green and it will not catch. Too dry and the fire outruns your control. Plains hunters are described firing in long lines to push a herd in one direction, or in a great closing ring, a surround that herds animals inward toward the center, or out through a single gap where the killing was done. And the same fire that drove the hunt remade the land for next year. Burning off old growth brought fresh green shoots that pulled the grazers back, so that a burned plain became a richer hunting ground a season later. On the other side of the world, The Aboriginal peoples of Australia practiced what has been called fire stick farming for tens of thousands of years, using fire so systematically to flush game and reshape vegetation that they slowly rebuilt the ecology of an entire continent. Burning to hunt and burning to farm the wild were, in the end, the same gesture. What makes it worth its place is what it represents. Every other method so far still needs a hunter close to the action, at the pit's edge, at the head of the drive lane. Fire is the first time we reached out and killed at a distance with something that was not a weapon and was not even in our grip. You change the animal's world, and the animal walks itself to the place you have chosen. It is also the first method that could turn on its maker in a heartbeat, because a wind that shifts does not care who lit the match. And the consequences ran far beyond a single hunt. When humans began burning the land at will, they became, without quite meaning to, an ecological force. In Australia, the arrival of people tens of thousands of years ago lines up with a lasting change in the continent's fire regime, recorded in layers of charcoal and in the chemistry of ancient eggshell. And some researchers have argued that this human burning helped tip the continent's giant animals toward extinction by remaking the vegetation they depended on. That link is genuinely debated, and climate is tangled up in it. But the very fact that we can argue about it is the point. A hunting technique that began as a way to steer a herd toward a gully had become, over enough millennia, powerful enough to reshape the living surface of a continent. Fire was the first tool that let a small band of people act on a scale far larger than their own bodies. And once we had it, we never really put it down. Number 6. The bog ambush. Letting the ground do the holding. A mammoth standing on firm earth is, for a human with a stone-tipped spear, very nearly unkillable. The same mammoth up to its belly in a bog is something else entirely. Weight that makes the animal invincible on solid ground becomes the thing that dooms it the moment the footing turns to mud. It sinks. It cannot charge. It cannot run. And a hunter can wade in close on firmer ground at the edge and kill at point-blank range with almost no danger at all. Across the northern world, a striking number of mammoth skeletons have been pulled out of what were once marshes, bogs, and soft lake margins in Siberia and across North America. For a long time, those bog mammoths were read as bad luck. Animals that blundered in and drowned, later scavenged by people who happened upon an easy carcass. And some of them surely were exactly that. This is the muddiest corner of the whole subject, in every sense. Telling apart an animal that died in a bog on its own from one that was deliberately driven into it is extraordinarily difficult, because the end state looks the same. For years, that ambiguity was used to argue that humans almost never truly hunted mammoths, that we were mostly opportunists at the edge of a swamp. What shifted the argument was sites like the engineered pits we just saw. Once you have proof that people were digging vertical-walled traps and herding mammoths into them with fire and noise, the idea that they would also exploit a ready-made trap, a natural bog, stops looking like a stretch and starts looking obvious. Why dig a pit if the landscape hands you one? The same hunters who built traps at TULTEPEC lived in a world full of soft ground, and driving a panicked animal a few hundred meters into a mire is far easier than digging a pit at all. And the bog gave a second gift after the kill. Cold, wet, low-oxygen mud is a natural refrigerator. A carcass too enormous to eat in a week could be butchered and cached in the bog itself, the meat kept for the lean months ahead. Which means some of those drowned mammoths may be not just kills, but larders. The same chemistry that preserved the meat is why we can still find these animals at all. Waterlogged, acidic, oxygen-starved bog holds back the bacteria of decay, which is why peat bogs across northern Europe have surrendered not only mammoths and aurochs and giant elk, but thousands of years later,
the eerily intact bodies of Iron Age people. A bog does not just trap, it keeps. And the animals it gave back read like a catalog of the heaviest game of the northern world. Mammoths in Siberia and the American Midwest, aurochs and elk and moose in the marshes of Europe. All of them animals whose great weight, the very thing that made them so hard to kill on dry land, became a liability the instant the ground turned soft. There is a real argument that the spread of humans into the cold wetlands of the north went hand in hand with learning to read that ground, to know which green meadow was solid and which was a skin of moss over a swallowing mire, and to use the difference as a weapon.
So the bog ambush is the same essential idea as the pit, with the digging already done by the world. You don't overpower the giant. You walk it onto ground that takes its strength away, and then you take your time. You can see the raw power of sticky ground taken to its extreme in places where nature ran the trap without us. At the tar seeps of what is now Los Angeles, tens of thousands of Ice Age animals, including mammoths and the predators that came to feed on the ones already stuck, were swallowed and preserved over millennia. An entire lost ecosystem pulled down by a few inches of clinging asphalt. No human hunter built that, but it is a vivid demonstration of the principle a bog ambush exploits. Against an animal whose whole defense is mass, the right kind of soft ground is more lethal than any spear. The hunters who used bogs were simply borrowing, on a smaller and more controllable scale, the same trap the tar pits sprang by accident.
And the prey list was not limited to mammoths. The aurochs, the enormous wild ox that was the ancestor of cattle, and the great Ice Age elk turn up in old European wetlands too. Animals powerful enough that meeting one on open ground was a serious risk, rendered helpless the moment their feet broke through. The whole craft came down to one piece of knowledge held by the hunters and not by the animal: where exactly the firm grass ended and the swallowing ground began. Drive a panicking giant across that invisible line, and the landscape did the rest. Number 5. Poison, when the wound isn't what kills. Around 24,000 years ago, in the Lubombo Mountains on the border of South Africa and Eswatini, someone left a thin wooden applicator in a place we now call Border Cave. When modern chemists analyzed the residue on it, they found ricinoleic acid, a chemical signature linked to ricin, the famous poison of the castor bean.
It is the oldest molecular evidence we have for one of the most quietly revolutionary ideas in the history of hunting: that you do not actually need your weapon to kill the animal. You only need it to break the skin. The poison does the rest. This changes the entire math of hunting something large. A small arrow or a light dart, thrown or shot, cannot kill a big animal through trauma alone. The wound is simply not enough. But coat that small point in the right toxin, and the size of the wound stops mattering. A scratch becomes lethal. The hunter's job shrinks to a single task: land one hit anywhere. And then the work is patience, following the animal for hours or days as the poison does its slow, certain job inside it. The chemistry these hunters commanded was genuinely sophisticated, and we know that because the tradition never died. In 2024, researchers studying a 7,000-year-old antelope thigh bone from Kruger Cave in South Africa, a bone that had been hollowed out and used as a quiver, found it packed with a poison that was not one ingredient, but several, including digitoxin and strophanthodin, two compounds that attack the heart muscle directly. They do not come from the same plant, which means someone was deliberately blending toxins from different species into a recipe. It is the oldest confirmed complex poison recipe in the world, and it points to a deep body of pharmacological knowledge. Which plant, which grub, which gland, in what dose, mixed how. That knowledge runs into the present. The sand hunters of the Kalahari are famous for it, using, among other things, the larvae of particular beetles, ground and applied to arrow shafts behind the point, a poison so potent that hunters handle it with extreme care and sometimes prepare an antidote for themselves.
Across the world, hunters have reached for plant alkaloids, cardiac glycosides, and the toxins of frogs and insects, all aimed at the same trick, outsourcing the kill to chemistry. Look at how much skill is folded into that. A Kalahari hunter digging for the grub of a particular leaf beetle is drawing on a chain of knowledge. Which species found under which tree, at which time of year, prepared in which way, smeared behind the arrowhead and not on the tip so the hunter does not poison himself drawing the bow. The poison is slow by design. The struck animal runs, and the hunter then tracks it for hours, sometimes for a day or more, reading the spoor until the toxin brings it down. That same ingenuity appears independently all over the planet.
In the rainforests of South America, hunters tipped blowgun darts with curare, a muscle paralytic that stops the breathing of animals high in the canopy. In Colombia, a few species of brilliantly colored frogs yielded a toxin so strong that wiping a dart across the animal's back was enough to drop large game. In Eurasia, hunters and warriors turned to aconite, the plant called wolfsbane. Different continents, different chemistries, the same revolutionary insight. A weapon does not have to be powerful if it can be poisonous. Honesty check, because the deep end of this story is contested. Ricinoleic acid is suggestive of ricin, but it can form other ways too, so a single chemical trace is not absolute proof of a working poison. There are claims of poisoned weapons reaching back 60,000 years or more, tied to the first small arrowheads, but those older cases are debated and not all chemically confirmed. What is solid is the arc from Border Cave to Kruger Cave. By 24,000 years ago, and unmistakably by 7,000, humans were tipping their weapons with death. There is a reason that arc matters so much for hunting big animals, and it has to do with a change in weapons that happened around the same time. As people began making smaller and smaller stone points, tiny, light, razor-edged blades meant for arrows and lightweight darts rather than heavy thrusting spears, those points became on their own far too small to kill a large animal by the wound alone. A pinprick from a sliver of stone does not stop a buffalo. Some archaeologists argue that the appearance of such small points is itself indirect evidence for poison, because the weapons only make sense if something other than the wound was doing the killing. Poison is what made the bow and the light dart into big game weapons. It let a hunter trade brute impact for reach and stealth. Slip close, land one small hit, and then fall back and wait, tracking the animal as the toxin worked through it over hours. The poison and the patient pursuit were partners. The chemistry struck the blow, and the hunter's endurance and tracking finished the job. It is the first method on this list where the thing that kills the animal is not the hunter and not the weapon, but a molecule. We learn to let a plant do the dying for us. Number 4. The ATLATL, the lever that rebuilt the human arm. Take a length of wood or antler about as long as your forearm, carve a hook or a cup into one end, and rest the butt of a light spear against that hook so the shaft lies along your hand. You have just built an ATLATL, a spear thrower, and you have just doubled the reach of your own arm. When you throw, the device acts as a lever and a second joint, whipping the dart forward far faster and farther than any arm alone could manage. The oldest spear throwers we can securely date come from around 17,500 years ago in France, and some of them are not crude sticks at all, but exquisite carvings, shaped into leaping animals by people who clearly treasured them. The performance is the whole point.
A dart launched from an ATLATL can fly at well over 100 kilometers an hour and hit with enough force to punch through hide, muscle, and bone, to drop a bison, or to drive deep into something far larger. Compared with a hand-thrown spear, it roughly doubles the range and multiplies the penetrating power, which means a hunter could deliver a serious, often killing wound from a distance where the animal could not reach back.
For tens of thousands of years before the bow, this was the most advanced projectile weapon on the planet, and it spread or was reinvented almost everywhere humans went. It armed hunters across Ice Age Europe and Asia. It crossed into the Americas. It became the woomera in Australia, and it was still in the hands of Aztec warriors when the Spanish arrived, who learned its Nahuatl name, ATLATL. There is a detail here that quietly ties the whole list together. Some of these spear throwers, and many of the dart points and foreshafts that went with them, were carved from mammoth ivory and reindeer antler. The most sophisticated long-range weapon of the Ice Age was, in part, built out of the very animals it was used to kill. The giant supplied the tool that brought the giant down. The physics of why it works is beautifully simple. By the time your hand stops and your wrist snaps forward, the hook at the far end of the ATLATL is still accelerating, swinging through a much longer arc than your hand alone could. And the dart sits at the end of that arc, picking up all of that extra speed before it leaves. It is the same principle that lets a long lever move a heavy load. You trade a little of your motion for a lot of the darts. Some cultures added carved stone weights to the shaft, the so-called banner stones, which may have tuned the throw or steadied it, though archaeologists still argue about exactly what they did. Modern enthusiasts who have rebuilt these weapons can hurl a dart the length of 2.5 football fields, and the Ice Age carvers clearly loved them. One of the most famous surviving examples, from a cave in the French Pyrenees, is sculpted into the shape of a young ibex glancing back over its shoulder, a hunting tool that is also a small masterpiece.
What it could not do, eventually, was outcompete the bow.
The ATLATL ruled for tens of thousands of years, but a bow can be fired faster, from cover, lying down, with smaller and more easily carried arrows. And over the last several thousand years, it gradually replaced the spear thrower almost everywhere. Almost. In a few corners of the world, the older weapon held on, which is the only reason we know its name at all. It was still in the hands of Aztec warriors facing Spanish steel, and they called it, in their language, the ATLATL. What the ATLATL really represents is the discovery of leverage as a weapon, the realization that a simple machine, a stick with a hook, could store the energy of your whole body and release it in an instant, turning a human arm into something that throws like no human arm should. It is the closest thing on this list to pure physics, and it ruled for so long that its eventual replacement, the bow, took thousands of years to fully win.
Distance, it turns out, was one of the deadliest ideas our species ever had, and the ATLATL was the first time we truly mastered it. It is almost certainly older, too, than the oldest examples we can hold. Wood and antler rot, and the beautiful carved spear throwers that survive, are simply the ones that happen to be made of more durable material or fell into the right ground. The weapon itself was probably in use for many thousands of years before that, in perishable forms we will never recover. What is striking is how central it was to the great hunts. When the first people spread across the Americas and met the mammoths, mastodons, and giant bison of a continent that had never seen a human, the ATLATL and its heavy darts went with them. The same Clovis points we met at the very start of this list were very likely launched, in part, from spear throwers as well as braced as pikes. For most of the time that humans and the great Ice Age beast shared the Earth, this lever was the most lethal distance weapon in existence. The device that let a person open a mortal wound in something enormous while standing far enough away to live. Number 3. Persistence hunting. The weapon is your own body. Every other method here reaches for something outside the hunter. A pit, a cliff, a poison, a lever. This one reaches for something almost no one thinks of as a weapon at all. The strange, specific way the human body is built to keep going. We are, for our size, among the finest endurance runners in the animal kingdom, and the reason is cooling. Most mammals shed heat by panting, and a panting animal cannot pant and gallop at the same time for long. It has to stop and dump heat, or it overheats and collapses. We do something different. We sweat across nearly our whole bare-skinned body, and we keep our heads cool as we go, which means a human can keep moving in the midday heat long after the animal it is chasing has to stop. The science behind this got its sharpest statement in 2004, when Dennis Bramble and Daniel Lieberman published a paper in the journal Nature arguing that endurance running is written into our anatomy, that the long, springy tendons in our legs, the big muscles in our backsides, the ligament that stabilizes the head as we run, the millions of sweat glands, the loss of fur, all point to a body shaped, in part, by the need to run prey to exhaustion. We did not evolve to be fast. We evolved to be relentless. You can still watch the technique work. Among the sand of the Kalahari, hunters have been recorded choosing an animal, a kudu, an antelope, in the heat of the day and simply following it, never sprinting, just keeping it in sight and never letting it rest.
The animal bursts away, then has to stop and cool.
The hunter walks up. It bolts again, a little weaker. And over hours, in temperatures that would break most predators, the gap closes until the animal can no longer rise, and the hunter walks up to a creature too overheated to run and finishes it by hand. And it does not only work on antelope. A mammoth or a rhino already carrying a poisoned dart or bleeding from a planted pike becomes a candidate for the same patient pursuit. You do not have to beat the giant in a moment, only refuse to let it recover. The body that makes this possible is a catalog of strange compromises. The long elastic tendons in the human leg, above all the Achilles, store and return energy with every stride like springs, something an ape's leg cannot do. The big muscle of the human backside, far larger than in any other primate, fires mainly to keep the trunk from pitching forward as we run. A special ligament at the back of the skull stabilizes the head so our gaze stays level while everything else jolts. And over the whole nearly hairless body lie millions of sweat glands, a cooling system so effective that a fit human can shed heat on the move in conditions that force a faster animal to halt. None of these traits helps you win a sprint. Every one of them helps you win a chase that lasts for hours. And persistence hunting demanded one more faculty that may matter most: tracking. To follow a single fleeing animal across hard ground, telling its prints from 100 others, and predicting where a tired creature will go, is a close reading of faint physical evidence that some researchers have called a candidate for the oldest form of science. This is the entry where the evidence is thinnest, and it has to be said plainly. Persistence hunting leaves almost nothing behind. No tool, no kill site you can read as a chase. So the case for it rests on human physiology and on the ethnography of living hunters rather than on direct archaeology. Some researchers think it was central to how we evolved. Others argue it was rare or situational. So this is a powerful, well-grounded hypothesis about the deep past, not a documented event from it. The skeptics have a real case, and it deserves a hearing. Critics point out that running an animal down in the heat costs the hunter enormous energy and a great deal of water, that it only works in particular climates and seasons, and that the ethnographic cases, while real, are not common, which makes some researchers think persistence hunting was a rare or situational tactic rather than a mainstay. Fair enough, but the supporting picture is broad. The endurance running anatomy is in every one of us. hard to explain except as an adaptation for sustained movement.
Living peoples have been observed doing it, from the San of the Kalahari to the famed long-distance runners of the Tarahumara in the mountains of Mexico. And careful fieldwork has documented Kalahari hunters chasing antelope to collapse in the full heat of the day. And even if it was never an everyday method, it did not have to be to matter. A technique you can fall back on when you have no other. When the spear is lost, the trap is empty, the herd has scattered, is exactly the kind of insurance that keeps a species alive through hard times. But sit with what it implies. Stripped of every tool, with no pit and no poison and no spear, the human being is still a hunting weapon, one that does not slash or sprint, but follows and follows and follows, until the strongest animal on the plain simply lies down. We are built to be the thing that never stops coming. Number 2, coordinated encirclement. The deadliest weapon was a plan.
In 1994, in an open-pit coal mine at Schöningen in central Germany, archaeologists pulled from the ground something that should not have survived at all. Wooden spears. Whole ones. Slim, balanced shafts of spruce and pine, along with a lance and double-pointed throwing sticks, the only complete set of Paleolithic wooden hunting weapons ever found, preserved by waterlogged mud for an almost unimaginable span of time. For years, they were thought to be 300,000 or 400,000 years old. A reanalysis published in 2025 revised that to around 200,000 years, which places the hunters who made them not among some distant ancestor, but among the Neanderthals. And the spears were lying among the butchered bones of horses. The site is known as the Spear Horizon, and what it records is not a single weapon, but a tactic.
Schöningen sat on a lakeshore, and the evidence shows that over and over, entire family groups of horses were driven against the water and killed there. The remains of more than 50 animals, mares and foals together, butchered on the spot. The original excavator pictured it vividly, hunters hidden in the thick reeds along the shore, the horses pinned between the people and the lake with nowhere to run, brought down by accurate throws from cover. Later study suggests the place was used again and again across different seasons, which only deepens the point. This was a known, repeated, practiced operation. And the toolkit found in that mud says these were not crude jabbing sticks. The spears were carefully shaped from spruce and pine, their weight balanced toward the front like a modern javelin, tapered and worked by someone who understood how a thrown weapon flies.
Alongside them lay double-pointed throwing sticks, short, aerodynamic batons that could be hurled to break a leg or drive a herd into panic, the oldest such weapons known. Taken together, it is an arsenal, a designed set of tools for different jobs in the same hunt, preserved so completely that we can practically pick them up. Nothing else like it survives from anywhere near that depth of time, which is why a waterlogged coal mine in Germany has become one of the most important windows we have into how the deep human past actually killed. And that is the real discovery, because the weapon that mattered at Schöningen was not the spear. A spear is just a sharpened stick. The thing that turned a band of Neanderthals into a force that could erase a herd of horses was coordination. 20 or 30 individuals who could agree on a plan, take up assigned positions, drive and block and kill in concert, cut specific animals out of a panicking group, and seal off every escape. The researchers who study the site are blunt about what that requires. It cannot be done without communication, foresight, role-taking, and a shared goal held in many minds at once. Communal hunting, long assumed to be a special talent of our own species, was already running like a machine among Neanderthals. Schöningen is not alone. At Atapuerca in Spain, ancestors of the Neanderthals appear to have driven bison off ledges. At Neumark Nord in Germany, groups took on straight-tusked elephants, an undertaking no lone hunter could survive. At lakeshore sites across the Old World, the same signature keeps appearing. Many animals taken together by people working as one. One archaeologist who studies these communal hunts put it about as directly as it can be put. This kind of planning and strategizing demands symbolic thought. To hunt this way, you have to be able to hold an idea, a plan that does not exist yet, in your head, and put it into someone else's. The single most haunting piece of evidence for close quarters cooperative hunting comes from another German site, Leringen, where archaeologists found the skeleton of a straight-tusked elephant, an animal far larger than a mammoth, with a wooden spear lying between its ribs. Someone, or more likely several someones, had driven a sharpened length of yew into the body of the biggest land animal in Ice Age Europe. No one does that alone and lives. And on the island of Jersey, at a site called La Côte de Saint-Brelade, heaps of mammoth and woolly rhinoceros bones piled at the foot of a rocky headland suggest Neanderthals were stampeding even these animals off the rocks. Across hundreds of thousands of years and a whole continent, the same picture keeps resolving out of the bones. Not lone heroes with spears, but groups, organized, each member doing a job, together accomplishing what none of them could attempt alone. That division of labor is the quiet revolution.
A successful encirclement needs drivers to move the herd, blockers to seal the escapes, and killers waiting at the chosen ground. Every one of them trusting the others to hold their parts of a plan agreed in advance. It needs someone to have scouted the terrain, someone to read the moment to commit, and a shared understanding of the whole shape of the hunt carried in many heads at once. That is not just teamwork. It is a model of the future, built together out of language, and executed by people willing to stake their lives on each other's reliability. This is also why the redating of those German spears lands so hard. For a long time, the cartoon version of the Neanderthal was a shambling brute, a dim cousin who got by on brawn. The spear horizon demolishes that. Whoever stood in those reeds 200,000 years ago and emptied a herd of horses, season after season, was planning, communicating, and cooperating at a level we once reserved for ourselves alone.
And the evidence for deep-time teamwork reaches back further still. At Boxgrove in southern England, around 500,000 years ago, even earlier humans butchered horses and rhinos with such order that some researchers see organized group hunting there too, including a horse shoulder blade that appears to carry the wound of a thrown spear. Long before our own species existed, the hominin line was already discovering that the surest way to bring down something big was not a better blade, but more minds working as one. That is what makes this the hinge of the whole story. Strength, speed, claws, venom, those are an animal's tools. Coordination is ours. Some scientists argue that the relentless demands of hunting together, the need to share plans, divide roles, remember favors, and trust the person beside you, were among the pressures that grew the social, language-using human brain itself.
If that is right, then the encircled herd and the talking, scheming hunters around it are not just a scene from prehistory. They are a glimpse of the engine that made us. That may be the most important thing on this entire list. The other 9 methods are tools and tricks. This one is the mind itself. The deadliest thing on the Ice Age plains was not an animal, and it was not a weapon. It was a sentence, a plan spoken aloud and understood by 20 people at the same time. We did not outmuscle the megafauna. We out-organized it. And there is a real argument that hunting like this, together, is part of what built the cooperative, talking, planning human mind in the first place. The hunt did not just feed us. It may have made us. Number 1. Weapons of ivory and bone. The animal becomes its own killer.
About 34,000 years ago, near what is now the Russian city of Vladimir, a group of Ice Age people buried their dead with a care and extravagance that still stops archaeologists in their tracks. The site is called Sungir, and when Soviet archaeologists excavated it, beginning in the 1950s, they uncovered some of the richest burials of the entire Paleolithic. An adult man lay covered in thousands of beads. 2 children were laid head-to-head beneath a blanket of more than 13,000 beads of mammoth ivory, each one carved by hand, each one representing perhaps 3/4 of an hour of work, more than 10,000 hours of labor poured into ornaments for 2 children. And lying beside the bodies were the weapons. They were spears made of mammoth tusk.
The longest, next to the man, was a full 2.5 meters of solid ivory, and it was perfectly, impossibly straight, which is the detail that should make the hair stand up on your arms. Because a mammoth tusk is not straight. It is a long, heavy, sweeping curve. To produce a straight ivory lance, these people had to take a curved tusk and unbend it, soaking it, heating it, and slowly forcing the ivory into a new shape it never had in life. That is not whittling. That is engineering. Material science, performed 34,000 years ago on the densest hunting material in their world. And here's the thing that lifts this to the top of the list. The weapons that killed mammoths were, again and again, made of mammoth. The lances were ivory. The points and the foreshafts were ivory and bone.
Hunters across the Ice Age tipped their spears with the bone of their prey, carved harpoons from reindeer antler, shaped dart throwers from tusk. One northern find even produced a massive spearhead cut from the horn of a woolly rhinoceros. The giant did not merely feed the people who killed it, it armed them. Its own body, reshaped, became the thing that brought down the next one of its kind. The mammoth was turned into its own killer. Getting a straight shaft out of a curved tusk was the hard-won secret at the heart of this. Ivory does not want to be straight, and you cannot simply carve a long straight rod from a curving one without wasting most of it and leaving the grain weak. The Sungir people seem to have solved it the only way it can be solved, by working the ivory while it could still be persuaded, softening it with prolonged soaking and gentle heat until it could be eased towards straight and held there as it set.
That a community 34,000 years ago understood ivory well enough to reshape its very form is a quiet astonishment, and it did not stand alone. This was a whole technological world. At sites like Dolny Vestonice in Central Europe and Kostenki on the Russian plains, the same broad Ice Age culture was carving ivory into figurines, beads, and weapons, even firing the earliest known ceramics. Elsewhere, people raised entire huts out of stacked and interlocked mammoth bones, dwellings framed from the skeletons of the animals they ate. The mammoth was not one resource among many. It was the lumber, the larder, the workshop, and the treasury of the Ice Age North, all in a single animal. And the people at Sungir clearly knew it because of where the ivory ended up. The man's grave, the children's grave heaped with 13,000 hand-carved beads, the straightened lances laid beside small bodies. This was not the work of people who saw the mammoth merely as meat.
They had taken the animal apart and remade it into the deepest tokens of their own lives and deaths, then sent those tokens into the earth with their most cherished dead. To carve a child's grave wealth and a hunter's killing spear from the same creature is to say, without a word, that the mammoth ran through everything they were. Meet the people in that grave, because they are what makes the point land. The man, known now as Sungir I, was around 40 when he died, old for the Ice Age, powerfully built, and important enough that his community spent a staggering amount of labor sending him into the ground. The analysis of his bones shows a diet heavy in reindeer, the meat of the cold open steppe. The children are stranger and sadder. A boy and a girl, roughly 8 to 12 years old, laid head to head, buried with even more wealth than the man. Those 13,000 beads, each representing perhaps 3/4 of an hour of carving, so that the ornaments on two children's bodies represent years of one person's work. Ancient DNA later revealed that the two children were not close relatives, which hints that these people lived in wide, deliberately connected social networks rather than small, inbred bands. And the sheer extravagance lavished on the young raises a haunting possibility that archaeologists still weigh. That status in this society could be inherited or conferred, that even a child could be wrapped in the accumulated wealth of the group. Whatever the reason, the message in the ivory is unmistakable. A community that survived by hunting the mammoth had come to express its deepest ideas about importance and loss and the journey after death in the body of that same animal. The craft on display was not limited to ivory. Among related finds from the Russian Arctic is a spear point nearly a meter long, cut and ground from the solid horn of a woolly rhinoceros. A second giant of the Ice Age turned into the weapon that would kill its own kind. Reindeer antler became harpoons and points. Heavy bone became daggers and the frameworks of homes. The hunters of this world looked at the largest, most dangerous animals around them and saw not only danger and food, but raw material. A standing supply of the strongest, densest, most workable substances in their environment, walking around on four legs. There is a quiet and slightly cooling completeness to it. The same ingenuity that let a small, soft creature kill a giant also let it use every part of that giant to kill the next one, and to clothe its children, and to bury its dead. And it is the same ingenuity, ultimately, that hangs over the empty landscapes the mammoth left behind. Sit with how strange and total that is. The same animal supplied the meat that fed them, the bones that framed their houses, the ivory that armed their spears, the beads that covered their children, and the grave goods that went with those children into the earth. To kill the largest creature in your world with a piece of that creature, and then to lay those ivory weapons in a grave heaped with ivory art, is to fold the animal into every single layer of being human. Food, shelter, technology, beauty, and the afterlife, all of it drawn from the same vast body. The hunt that began with a sharpened stone ends here, with a straightened tusk laid in a grave, because by now the animal is not just prey. It has become the raw material of the entire human world. That is the deepest expression of everything this list has been about. We never beat the megafauna with strength or speed or claws. We beat it with ideas. And the final idea was the most complete of all. We did not only learn to kill the biggest animals on Earth, we learned to turn them, bone and ivory and tusk, into the means of killing, and then into the meaning of our own lives. Finale. 10 ways to kill the largest animals that ever lived. And look at what is almost entirely missing from the list. Strength. There is no entry here for "we were stronger," or "we were faster," or "we had natural weapons." We had none of those things. We were slow, soft, clawless, and outweighed 100 to 1. What we had was a different thing entirely, and every method on this list is a version of it. The planted pike turns the animal's own mass into the blow. The pit and the bog turn the ground into a cage. The cliff drive turns the landscape into the weapon, and fire turns the wind itself into a tool. Poison hands the killing to a plant. The ATLATL turns a stick into leverage and steals the gift of distance. Persistence hunting weaponizes the one freakish thing our bodies are best at. Encirclement turns other people into the deadliest force on the plane. And in the end, ivory and bone turn the animal into its own undoing. Not one of these is a stronger arm. Every one of them is a better idea. And there is a real case that this is the origin of us. To plant a pike, you need nerve, but to dig a reusable trap, build a kilometer of drive lanes, blend a poison recipe, coordinate 30 people against a herd, and straighten a tusk with fire? For that, you need planning, memory, teaching, language, and the ability to hold a future that does not exist yet inside your head and share it with someone else. The pressure to bring down animals far bigger than ourselves may be one of the forces that carved those abilities into our species. We did not just become smart and then start hunting. We may have hunted our way into becoming human. There is a shadow over all of it, and it would be dishonest to end without naming it. We were extraordinarily good at this.
By the end of the last ice age, the mammoths, the mastodons, the giant ground sloths, and much of the world's great megafauna were gone. And the argument over how much of that was a changing climate and how much was us has run for decades and is not settled. But the cleverness this whole list celebrates is the same cleverness that helped empty a planet of its giants. The most ingenious predator the Earth ever produced learned to kill anything, of any size, anywhere. And then it did. So picture the two images this countdown began and ended with. A man kneeling in the dirt, bracing a wooden spear against the charge of a living mountain. And 34,000 years later, that same animal, reshaped into a straight ivory lance, laid gently in a child's grave. Between those two moments is the whole story of how an unarmed ape became the deadliest thing alive. There is one more thing worth carrying out of all this. Every method on this list was, in its own time, a kind of miracle of intelligence. A creature with no natural weapons, solving again and again the problem of how to kill something it had no business killing. That same intelligence is what eventually emptied the tar pits and the bogs and the bone beds of their giants, and then went on to remake the entire planet. The mind that braced the first pike and straightened the first tusk is the same mind reading these words. We are still the animal that looks at something far larger than itself and starts quietly to plan. If this kept you to the end, subscribe. There is far more of this hidden history, the strange, true record of what our ancestors actually did, and we are going to keep digging it up. And tell me in the comments, which of these 10 surprised you most? And the question I actually want answered, if a mammoth were charging you right now, and you could choose only one of these methods to survive it, which one would you trust with your life? Until next time.